I'm here with Andrew from Kick. Now, and that might conjure various images. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. So let's just go. Let's just start with the word kick because that doesn't necessarily conjure up perhaps what you are, or maybe it does for people. But how would you explain what kick is all about?
Thank you. Yes, no, I have this conversation regularly. When we're at an event or we have some of our banners or we have stands, people would assume that we do football and nothing more, which would be fine. I'd have no problems with that at all. But no, essentially, we are a provider of education resource to schools. We provide PE teaching, which is where the kick originally came from. We provide mentoring, lay chaplaincy, and also street dance. So we're actually multifaceted. We're 25 years old next year, so there comes a point in which you sort of want to hold on to some of your origins and sort of your backgrounds. That we were started as kick, and therefore it's something which we just feel it's right to keep. People to say does it stand for something? No, it's just that's who we are. People do seem to recognise us now, which is great as well. And yeah, no, it's great to be with you today and talk more about it.
Kick is great there because it generates a question. It doesn't shock people into, oh, what's that about? It starts a conversation because I want to know what's kick all about. Because as a name, it's so short and simple, but sort of is indicative of something exciting, but I don't know what it is. But it works.
Absolutely. So I might be, or my colleagues might be at a Christian festival where we, are stood with very familiar names who are decades old and also have a ministry which is very, very well known. Their name might go before them very much. Or I might be at a head teacher conference with 150 head teachers and I'm looking to start conversations with them. They have no idea who we are at all. And it does give an opportunity to say, have you heard of Kick? Can I explain who they are? And yeah, it's exciting. It's quick, it's punchy, which is how we like to sort of roll as well. So we are a youth organisation again, so it's a name that does sort of tick a box with younger people, and it's easy to remember.
Easy's good. We like easy. Easy's
Yeah.
very good. Right now, let's just go to this because I could probably certify for you as dodgy dad dancing. But what's the street dancing about? How do you use that to engage with people?
Great question. And people of our age will remember and wake up in a cold sweat when we look back to our primary school dance sessions. Times have changed greatly.
I'm a tree.
Yeah, yeah. So it's street dance, it's really important. I do put that sort of first part of the title on it. It conjures up a very different picture. So when I say to my teenage boys when I was explaining what kick did, when I first joined, they knew straight away what street dance was. They could think of people in social media. They hear through their music that are fashionable and are cool and the cutting edge. Essentially, we provide dance provision to schools, and there's around 12 different styles that we provide. And some schools want a fairly classical provision, but most of them want something which is going to engage young people in a way that maybe, you know, they haven't had an opportunity to provide themselves. It is a skill set. We've got dancers that work for Kick who are expert in this area. And sometimes they combine work with us with performing and running their own dance schools. But essentially, it's a way to engage boys and girls. It's moved on dramatically to when we were at school, as I said. It's something which different cultures and backgrounds can really buy into. So what will happen is we will lace, like we do with all of our work, the fruits of the spirit. The Kick values that we talk about very clearly with head teachers, with church leaders, with everybody, underpins and goes really laces through all of our work. So when we're delivering a street dance session, we'll be using one of the Kick values as a part of the session plan of session objectives. And we want that to come across in the movements, in the collaborative work, in the production and the performance. So yeah, it's not something I lead on, but it's something which young people love, and we want to be relevant to young people, but also, share the gospel clearly. And the two things together are what we seek to do.
I remember very vividly, I was doing a year out with something called the PACE Project, PACE Movement now, the Global Missions Movement in schools and youth work when I was there. And we were really privileged. East Manchester, it was pretty rough schools. And we had this group of American athletes that came, and they were basketball players or footballers or all sorts of, your professional athletes. And they came along and we had struggled so hard to get these young people to sit down to listen not to swear, not to shout. And yet these guys from the States came in, and I don't think it's because they're American, but I mean, the basketball guys, they were so tall, it's insane
Mm.
if you don't actually see them for real. And these young people just sat and listened, and then they gave the gospel at the end because they were showing off their skills, which was impressive. And I think that captured the young people in a way that dancing or football or whatever is going to do in order to talk. So from my perspective, having worked in schools, thinking, why can't I get them to sit and listen? And yet these guys came in, these guys and girls from states did whatever their sport was, and then these kids were like, okay, yeah, well, listen. Is that sort of a similar kind of thing?
Yes. I mean, what we firmly believe at Kick is that, the Bible tells us that we are all part of one body and we have different gifts, don't we? We've got different experiences, we've got different ministries. And what we want to try and do at Kick is, be relevant to young people in the here and the now. And that is important. You've just given a perfect example of how you can get their attention. And we're not saying for 1 minute that there is a predetermined age or gender or physical look that determines whether you can do youth work or not. That's not true. The person the two people that I look back on in my very early years that really loved me into the church family, despite me not having a Christian background at all, were both beyond retirement age. Eileen and William, they'd long retired. They knew nothing about youth work, nothing about football. But as part of a London City mission, not a church, a small building, they opened the doors every night to young people. And I went along and I kicked the ball around and I got biscuits and I got drinks and I felt loved. And by the age of 13, eventually I made a decision to become a Christian. Now, Eileen and William would struggle if I sent them into an inner city London school to do a football session. But they are the main reason that I'm sat here talking to you today. So we know that God uses different people with different backgrounds and different timings. The timing and the purpose and the mission for us right here, right now, is to fill a vacuum within young people's lives. We know, statistically speaking, that there is a huge gap within young people's lives with positive role models. We know particularly that male role models are missing with a number of young people in their lives. So we want to fill that vacuum with Christian role models. So we know that typically speaking, you need to have something that's deemed attractive by that person, be it your skill set, your character, whatever it is. That's typically the hook that gets young people on side. So we do want to employ Christians that love Jesus, love young people, but also have an energy and a charisma that will be attractive. Now, we're not saying to go in and perform juggling acts and you have to be the next sort of, some sort of television star. Far from it. But we, as Christians, we have a joy. We have an abundance of hope in our salvation, our relationship with Jesus, and we want that to overspill into the lives of young people. And some days will be tough. Sometimes staff, will ring us and say, "Oh, can you pray for me? I've had a real tough day," or that didn't go as well as I hoped. Well, join the club. Every single teacher in this land is hanging by a thread at some point during the term. I was an educator for 20 years, leadership for 10 of it. And I saw many, many very capable, experienced people struggle. So we are not providing people that are perfect. We're providing people that love Jesus, love young people, clearly have skill sets in these areas. We do train staff up as well, considerably. But also we want them to be relatable to young people, to understand what they're going through. And clearly, when they are nearer to their age, that provides a hook sometimes. So yeah, we want the kick coach to be someone that is energetic, that is inspirational, aspirational for the young person as well, and that is an attractive thing for young people to look at.
I think one of the things you said, which is so key, so important, is if you're going to be basketball coach, you kind of need to have an understanding of basketball. But do you know what? You don't have to help people with basketball and be that, because actually we also need people on the sidelines, like the two people that led you to church, to family, to Jesus. Because okay, they probably wouldn't know what to do with that necessarily, but they did know what to do with some biscuits and juice and to show the love of Jesus, which is what I'm hearing from you across all that you're
Mm.
doing. Is that passion of yeah, this is great, but you know what, Jesus, this is the bit you need, and it's a really great tool to show people Jesus. And actually, you know what, God's made us with gifts, so you're actually kind of demonstrating God's made us with gifts. Look at how good we can be as people, but here's Jesus too. And I love that kind of that approach. Having witnessed that from those guys in the 90s from the States, and hearing what you were saying and seeing some of what you did at the Big Church Festival where we met, because it's, you know, we do have young people need good role models, and it's great that you're doing exactly that.
Yeah, and do you know what? Those guys came over from the States, and my boys would hang on their every word. You know, they're both, you know, their dad's a PE teacher, so my children had no choice in life but to play copious amounts of sports, and they love the NBA. We were at the Harlem Globetrotters event recently, and they were sort of stood there with their jaws hanging down the whole time. But it's a novelty, and novelties do wear off. So attention grabbing, special moments are crucial, but actually it's walking with the young people and the young person for the long term that makes the difference. So, you know, we haven't got dozens of MBA professionals on tap to send into schools. So we've got to provide people that are going to love young people for the long term, build intentional relationships, be an integral part of the school. Now, clearly, when we're sending PE coaches in, the fact that they're capable footballers or dancers is a kudos thing. There's no doubt about it. And when you send a chaplain, so we employ and train and provide lay chaplains because we respect the fact there's already chaplains working in schools. The two are very similar, but what we want to raise up is a generation of young people who have got experience, gifting, clearly great knowledge of the Bible and pastoral theology, but also maybe aren't confined to having to wear certain regalia and having to follow certain practices. They're there just to share the love of Jesus first and foremost and serve in school and be of an age and an energy and a relevance that can reach out to young people in a different way, in a slightly more innovative way, go alongside the great work that the established church already does. But as I say, children, you know, novelties wear off, interests come and go. So to get their attention with events is fantastic. You know, to do outreach events, you normally have to have these sorts of people because it captures attention, draws crowds. But once the dust has settled, they've moved on. A bit like the Billy Graham Crusades decades and decades ago. It's so important to invest in the local church for the follow-up.
Mm.
So we want to be in the school for the long term. We're not a supply agency. We don't supply staff for terms. We are there for the long term. Many of our staff have been in schools for several years, and that's actually how you go deep within the school community, be that consistent presence, that positive role model that I spoke about. And that goes alongside actually what we also do, which is to equip and support the local church to do sports ministry as well. So a bit of a sideline to our work is that we also use our time and our giftings and our experiences. You know, our exec team are made up of 3 former school leaders. And also we've got over 100 staff, with about 40% of them being very capable, qualified sports coaches. So we know how young people learn. We know how to set positive environments for learning. We also know how to do sport. But we also know that the church are the experts with bringing a young person to a decision in Christ and also then discipling them.
Mm.
We want to demonstrate Christ with our actions and through our lives. We want to declare Christ and his teachings where we can within schools. So within church, within the schools, that's quite easy. Within secular schools, it might be through the kick values in the lessons, or it might be through assemblies, which gives us more scope than people often realize, running a Christian union, etc., etc. But we also know that we want to be able to point these young people wherever we can towards the local church. So we actively connect to local church to say that we're in their school. Can we connect the two? But also we go to church and say, if you want to connect to your school, here's a model or a vehicle that you can use to do so. So we train church to do either football kick academies or street dance kick academies. They're two very fashionable things. They're very much in vogue. Football clubs are bursting at the seams. Street dance is one of the most popular things that reaches out to both genders from different backgrounds. So these are things that we can train the church to be able to do, to equip them both with resources but also finance as well, because we're constantly fundraising to be able to give money away to the church. And then we ongoingly support these churches through providing them with some coaching experience, ongoing, or providing them with resources. We bless them by giving them some of our coaches as well to do sessions, so they can sort of team teach or learn from how we do it. And then that is, a great opportunity to say to a school, we're running this. Would you like to? Could you advertise it? And the children will come. These, Kick Academy in 2024 will sound slightly more appetizing to a child than a Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think culturally where we are, so we have to be innovative. We have to put ourselves in sort of the marketplace, because we're competing against other attractions the young people are going to encounter. We believe that Jesus Christ is by far the most attractive proposition they have, and crucially, the only one of eternal benefit. So we need to make sure that we can reach them as best we can.
You talked earlier about how you were sort of loved into the church family, if you like, by that elderly couple. What's your journey of faith then? You said non-church background. You met these guys and they gave you biscuits and football and opportunity to be loved. So, what's your story of faith as an individual?
Brilliant. Yeah. So thank you. I mean, it was sort of 5 or 6 years old that mum and dad were getting a bit fed up. They found me difficult when I was very young. I think, if they used the term back then ADHD, that would probably been the label. I didn't sleep. I was always tearing around the house, invariably breaking things. Dad worked quite long hours. We had a very small garden in London. You don't get big gardens. So a caged animal would be wrong, because I had lovely, loving parents and went to a nice school and did do things, but it was not, it was tough. There's a reason it took 5 years before my brother came along, because I don't think they could bear the idea there'd be a second Andrew. So part of their solution was to send me to different clubs, and mum sent me to tennis because she loved that, and dad, when he came home, tried to wear me out of the park. But one option was literally the London City Mission, wonderful organisation. Have lots and lots of back in certainly the mid to late 80s when I was going there, had small churches that they didn't look like churches. They would be small buildings on estates in and around London. And Ealing, West London, is actually quite an affluent area, but there's still 1 or 2 pockets there that needed, as much help as it could get. So about half a mile away, there was a very small, a bit like a cabin, really, from the front. And London City Mission, they South Ealing Mission, open their doors pretty much every night of the week to local young people. Now, you would, the people that are running these things, didn't necessarily have youth qualifications. They didn't necessarily have strategies, or they didn't necessarily know much about ratios of young people to adults and all this sort of stuff, because that wasn't really, a thing back then, was it? But I got to run around for a couple of hours every Monday in a safe place. And I just knew that this was a good, safe place, and these people loved me. They took us on trips at half terms, and I realised that there were kids all the way up to sort of 18 that were doing all these sorts of clubs, and just a really fun place to be. And campaigners was the movement that they adopted and used. And what you do was every 3 or 4 years you'd sort of be in a group that was part of 5 to 8, and then you'd move up to the 8 to 11 group, and then 11 to 14. Well, I moved up 3 or 4 times, and each time it was just complete commitment from these people. Every single week they would turn up and they would let us have fun. They would love us, and they would share the gospel. And then, as I say, there would be camps in the summer they start taking us to, and all in their own time. They all had full-time jobs. And then I went up to the main, this wasn't the main group. It was like the biggest group when you get to 13. It's 13 to 17-year-olds. And I was the only one that moved up that September. And because the others were all the year below me at school in the group, I just left. And I went one Wednesday night, and there was about 20 guys there, 25, mixture of boys and girls. And I didn't really know them by name, just by faith a little bit. And it was the first week back, and they'd all been on this camp. And I saw something that Wednesday night. So 1993, before, when a lot of your listeners would have been born. And I saw a togetherness, a friendship, a love that was indescribable. I'd never seen this. I had plenty of mates at school. I played for all the sports teams, but this was something I'd never really seen. I didn't know really what it was at that time either, but I saw them just embracing, laughing, smiling. The way they were to me was something which was awe-inspiring. And without being able to put a name on it, I began to realise, as the leader, Liam, at the end of that night, the youth leader, gave an opportunity for people to receive Christ. I realised what happened was that they'd all had an encounter with this living God,
Hmm.
a real life-changing encounter in the summer, and they'd been filled with this Holy Spirit, and it was actually coming out of them in their actions, in their behaviour, in their love. And the reason Liam was given that invite was because they'd made these commitments in the summer, but of course I was there and I hadn't. And Liam desperately wanted me to have that opportunity and not have to wait the whole year for the next camp. And he gave the simple message, the one that we've heard, several times now as adults, that Jesus loves us, he died for us, that he's paid the price, and that he wants a relationship with me, that everything that I'd done wrong was going to be made right through his sacrifice, and that actually, if you want to, live your life with him and receive eternal life, that is on offer. And that in itself was enough to get me. But having seen what the people around me had so tangibly, I went up to him after and said, "Yes, please." And it was pretty much like that. And we went to the vestry, and we prayed, and I made that commitment there and then. And from that point on, that became my extended family. I was, from there from the age of 5 to 18 when I went to university. Role model after role model. Moved on to the church football team on a Saturday, and by the age of sort of 14 or so, and then was gifted with 15 or 16 Christian guys that were 5, 10, 15 years older. And what a blessing that was.
Mm.
And that's certainly a message I keep trying to share with churches when I speak to them. You cannot put a price on role modeling for these young people in your church. Just by them turning up isn't always enough. They need to be looking up at the next generation and learning from them, and wanting to be like them. And that's really what shaped me. Mum and dad didn't know the Lord, and so therefore I looked to these people in the church for everything: how to live, how to read the Bible, how to be a Christian at school, how to then be prepared to be a Christian university. That's the journey of faith. And then came to university, and helped to run the Christian Union, and joined a church in Canterbury, was part of the leadership of Canterbury Baptist Church for about 10 years. And then began to make my way up with education to more senior roles. And that brings me to Kick today. So, yeah, the first bit's more interesting than the second bit, because the first bit was very much, coming to Christ for the first time, and just how important it is to reach out to young people, offer them a safe place, offer them love, show them Jesus through your actions. And it might be a slow burn. I mean, I was 5 when Mum sort of sent me along in despair, and it wasn't until I was 13 that I made a commitment. That's 8 years of investment, and I'll be willing to do that in 2024 is the question we have to battle with, and I hope we are.
Thank you. That was an amazing story. I love how just people loving you, but it transforms your life, which then transforms other lives. But I think it's so easy to think, okay, we're going to do this thing, and then people will do this, and then it'll all be great. And that might be true, but those, few steps, like for you, it wasn't overnight. It wasn't that second. And the other thing that I'm hearing so many times as I speak to so many people from different backgrounds around the world, different ways, that process can be quite long, but the ability to have people continually feeding into our life, that discipleship, which you talked about with Kick as well, that's so crucial, because if people come in and do something, that's great, but you want the bit after as well. And I so respected a guy I saw at a big church in the Midlands. He came and he preached. I mean, this is an international guy who goes all around the world, literally. And he was there at the end of the church. Says, "I'm not going anywhere. If you want to talk to me, you want to agree with me or disagree with me, I'm going to stand here." And we spent there. We had a cup of coffee. We were there for an hour afterwards. He was still there, and he would not move until everybody had had the opportunity to speak to him. He says, "I don't want to just come in here, speak, and disappear. That's not right." And I had so much respect for this guy, because he just waited to invest into lives, which is what you're saying people doing over a long period of time. We don't always get to see the fruit of that, but it doesn't mean to say that we should just not keep going.
Absolutely. And going back to Kick, we have around 100 to 105 staff. I should be more specific, but we're in the summer holidays at the moment, so we're actually interviewing and things. So we have in excess of 100 staff. We're in over 100 schools, and we're actually engaging north of 27,000 young people, because we are actively asking to do assemblies. We're actively asking to do whole school activities as well. So it's a huge reach. And we know that young people should not be defined by statistics, because God's made every single person individually. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, and what He's got in store, even for those who don't know Him yet, is so exciting. But we have to take a punt somewhere in what's the lay of the land. We know that 1 in 3 young people have a mental health, identified as having a mental health problem, and that's probably only going to go in one direction. We know that statistically speaking, 3 out of 5 sixth form age young people use the term hopeless when talking about future prospects, not in terms of there is no chance to get on a course or to do this, but just in terms of despondency about future. So what we want to do is to be able to speak into what the sort of current situation seems to be. So it's taken a young person 16 years to get to sixth form, so there's quite a lot of unraveling to do potentially. A young person identifies having a mental health challenge, a mental health illness. That hasn't probably come overnight. Some people, it's a bit too easy just sort of throw a blanket over COVID and say that's what's caused everything. That's not true. This was there before COVID. So, we're not going to deal with these problems by being in a school for a week. Some schools, some say, oh, you've had a group of mentees for a term, but do you think you're ready to move them on? And we will fight tooth and nail if we don't think they're ready, because we want to help these kids as much as we possibly can. We obviously respect how schools work. Our executive team we've run schools. We know, but we want to invest in these young people. We don't move Kick staff from school to school. They stay in the same school for a long period of time. They build relationships that are intentional with young people, because it's going to take a lot of loving, a lot of time, a lot of speaking aspirational thoughts into their lives as well. It's going to sort of right any wrongs that happened, or change that curve. So yeah, we're in this for the long haul. When we support church to run Kick academies, we don't just train them to do sport and then move off. We actually deploy a Kick link coach to every single church we work with, which by December of this year is forecast to be getting on towards 50 churches. So we will, with no financial commitment, deploy staff to continue to mentor and support these churches, because we believe these church ministries will probably need several years in order to grow and develop and to reach their potential. And so we're in things for the long haul. We want to be intentional and integral in all the relationships that we have. And that's sort of the angle that we're coming from. We believe is very much our calling.
For people who want to get involved with Kick in some way, whether they are church leaders who are thinking, okay, what we're going to do next year. I mean, I've been in church ministry. They don't think tomorrow; they think ahead. Okay, what we're going to do next term, next season, or perhaps for schools that are thinking we've got a gap. How can we meet that? We don't have this kind of capability. How can they get hold of you? And what sort of situations are you? Because you can't cover 68 million people. What are the sort of situations where you're really covering that people can think, these guys can actually help us at this time moving forwards?
Thanks. Yeah. So we as school practitioners are in London, all across the Midlands, and we're in the Teesside area of Newcastle and the sort of Manchester, Stockport area of the Northwest. And we have this sort of funnel shape, actually, we didn't do it around the shape. We did it out of calling. We're Kick London for many, many years, and we felt called to expand. We had churches reach out and encourage us to do so. We had Christian supporters that encouraged us to do so. So we're in Birmingham, the Northeast, around the Newcastle and Teesside area, Manchester, Stockton. They're all areas that are wonderful and have got amazing people, but have a disproportionate amount of need, particularly in schools and with youth. So we are actively working in those schools. The reason we don't go scattergun is because we have a branch manager in each region. We've invested a lot of time and effort and love in getting to know the local church so we can co-mission wherever possible. And of course, the church is where our staff come from. You know, we only want to employ people that know and love the Lord Jesus as much as they love young people, because that's our army of believers that are going to be going to school and executing this. But interestingly, our churches that we work with to support them that want to do football or street dance, they can be anywhere. Now, a number of them do actually connect with our local schools, and there is a pathway between the two, which is wonderful. I know a lot of churches finding it increasingly hard to get beyond the front door of the school in 2024. So we have a model here which can act as that bridge between the church and the school. But a number of our church academies, key academies, are not nearby our schools, and it could be people anywhere. So we're speaking with people in Wales, right at this moment in time, down on the south coast. So not where we're actively working, but that doesn't matter, because we know that, as with me, the London City Mission Church opening their doors, providing some sort of structured sport with a gospel message, is very enticing for young people and parents. So any church up and down the country that want to look at either doing football or street dance, not only can we train you, support you, provide you all the resources, but we will walk with you continuously moving forward. We don't train and leave. We are there working with you regularly moving forward. And if you are linked with a school in any way, so you might be a parent that would long to see more Christians in the school your children go to, or you might be a governor that would love to see more Christians in your local school, or you're a school leader, I'd love to speak to you, because we feel that we have a service with our sports coaching, PE teaching, our street dance, our mentoring, and our lay chaplaincy that could bless your school. It could bless a number of young people there, and we'd love to make that happen. So anyone that has a connection with the school, if you were to reach out to me, I could then explain to you how we connect with schools. We have a system that is very successful. We're in over 100 schools. The majority of that has come about, well, the vast majority have come about because Christians have introduced us to those schools. So that's a wonderful privilege for us to be able to have those introductions. And invariably, when a third party or a school stakeholder introduces us, it's very hard for a head teacher to say no. So I'm very quickly on that, and we're quite sharp in our execution of selling what we do to schools. And once we're in a school, we tend to stay there for quite some time, and that Christian then is there praying for that school, blessing that school, sharing the gospel. So do reach out to us. My email is andrewmartin@kick.org.uk, and we can either support your church with sports ministry, or you can enable us to be able to get more Christians into your local school.
Just give us the website generally for people to access Kick.
So www.kick.org.uk.
kick.org.uk. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time today. I get excited by people who want to do more than just something. They want that something to last and invest long term, because it excites me, having worked in churches, having worked in youth work, that's often been lacking by some amazing things. But that longevity, that long haul is so key. And it led to you finding Jesus from the age of 4, 5 up to 13. We need people who are willing to invest for a long time, and that's clearly what Kick are doing. So thank you so much for your time today. If you want to know more about Kick or Andrew and get in touch with him, kick.org.uk. Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.